What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now taking us into Tucson, Arizona, where out of the Big 12 Conference, the Arizona Wildcats are going to look to build in the Brent Brennan era off of what overall was a disappointing 2024 campaign. My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I want to thank y'all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to support the channel even further, then you can do what it says right below here. Hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially not one of your favorite team. Now, I am diving on into the professional sports media world. I do have a sports media degree, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do in the industry while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, then you can give me a follow at TailgateNate29 on Twitter or X and Instagram. You can even feel free to email me at tailgate29@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me or the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. And with all of that said and done and out of the way, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. This man right over here, Brent Brennan, your head coach for the Arizona Wildcats for the 2025 season. Second year at the helm for Brent Brennan, a guy who I personally really like as a head coach, but it was a disappointing campaign last season. There were a lot of things that went wrong, but a lot of those things can be corrected, as you do have to replace a couple pieces overall, but with a overall majority of your production coming back from last year, I do think there are some people sleeping on what Arizona can do in 2025. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, I am going to go through a roster overview. The offense is going to be right over here to the left, and the defense is going to be over here to the right. At the end of the video, we are going to dive on into the Wildcats football schedule. I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and this video overall is going to tell all of you what I think about the Arizona Wildcats here in 2025. Now, before we do get started, right down below me are returning production numbers according to ESPN. They do factor in transfer portal additions to a certain percentage. You see there's 67%, especially 71% offensively. They are, I believe, in the top 15, if not, they are at very least in the top 20 to 25 teams in the country in terms of returning production. Right below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks are both according to 24/7 Sports, and they are rankings for the class of 2025. Now, with all that said and done and out of the way, I will go ahead and say I will apologize for mispronunciations throughout this video. There probably will be quite a bit of them. Starting here with the offense and the offensive coordinator, Seth Dagey, and Noah Fafita is going to be coming back. He is set to return, and there were a lot of people, including myself, I've said this before, and I would like to go back on it a little bit, or sort of back up what I mean by it. Noah Fafita is set to return this season. He, to a lot of people, had a disappointing campaign last year. 2,958 yards is not disappointing. In fact, it was an improvement on what he did in 2023. Here's where the disappointment came in. Only 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions compared to 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions that he showed us in 2023. So, while I do think overall you probably expected a little bit more out of Noah Fafita last year, if he combines the passing yardage with what he did in 2023, or I should say with what he did last year in 2024, continues to improve on that and increase that total, and he had 60.5% completion percentage last year. He had over 70% completion percentage in 2023. So if he gets back to completing over 70% of his passes, generating more yards per pass attempt, more yards per completion, and gets that touchdown to interception ratio back right, I think you are looking at a very successful start to what this Arizona offense can do. It was not the passing game that was the problem last season, and yet it can get better this year. So if it wasn't the passing game, then where was the problem? It means it was with the running game. This was a run game last year that just was not good. Only 1,270 yards as a whole collective unit with 3.8 yards per carry. I think they averaged maybe 120 yards per game, if that. It might have even been less than that. Quayle Conley leaves for the NFL. He is with the Cincinnati Bengals. Your leading rusher last year, 745 yards and 8 touchdowns on 150 carries. Probably was that bright spot in that running back room last year. Did maybe not have the season a lot of people thought that he was going to have. I think some people thought he was going to explode and have a much more prolific season, but you can't argue with the production he did bring, but you are going to be losing him. You do bring in some absolutely phenomenal transfer portal pieces, and the one that I absolutely love, I think is a home run hit, is Ismail Mahdi. 2023, 1,331 yards and 10 touchdowns on 6 yards per carry, also with over 250 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown in 2023, 2024, 991 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, and 2 receiving touchdowns on almost 200 receiving yards, both of those years at Texas State. I did like Quaylee Conley coming over from San Jose State a year ago. I love Ismail Mahdi. He is such a fun player to watch, and he is that dual threat running back. Yes, he's an amazing rusher, but you can rely on him to catch passes out of the backfield as well. There are going to be some more portal pieces that are going to be entering this room. But overall, Ismail Mahdi is just an absolutely phenomenal piece. You do have Mike Mitchell and Quincy Craig, some other names coming over through the transfer portal. You also do have a returner and Kendrick Riscano, but overall, it will be Ismail Mahdi that leads this room, and I couldn't love it more for Brent Brennan and this Arizona Wildcat team. Tet McMillan, all know what big part he played in this offense last year. 1,319 yards and 8 touchdowns receiving last season on 84 catches, had 15.7 yards per catch, is an amazing, talented piece, a first-round pick to the Carolina Panthers. However, your second leading receiver, Chris Hunter, is going to be coming back, 323 yards and 3 touchdowns on this Arizona Wildcat team last season. And then a triplet of impactful transfers are going to be entering this room as well. Luke Wysong is one that I would like to mention first, coming out of New Mexico. 840 yards and a touchdown on almost 70 catches for him last season. Chris Hudson is another guy that I like, coming out of Washington State. 683 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. And then you go back into the 2 deep. Again, those 2 guys will be up there with Chris Hunter. Trey Spivey is a guy coming over from Kansas State that got lost in the wide receiver room. I think poses some immense upside and some really, really good overall talent. I like him a lot. So you pair again those transfers with Chris Hunter as well as some other returning pieces, especially one with experience like Jeremiah Patterson. I love this wide receiver room, and I think it's going to be great for Noah Fafita. I think he can easily get 3,000 yards this year. In fact, 3,200, 33, maybe even 3,500. I don't think is out of the question for this passing offense this season. In the tight end room, it gets better. Sam Olsen definitely coming back, and Keon Burnett is a little bit of an interesting case study. Originally transferred to Kansas, but then decided to re-enter his name into the transfer portal in the spring and is back with Arizona, currently committed. I don't know if he is enrolled yet, but from the sounds of it, it sounds like he is ultimately coming back to this Arizona team. Those were your top 2 tight ends last season. Cameron Barmore is a transfer coming in to help give you some added depth. And then when you look at the offensive line, yes, 3 starters do leave. The left side of the offensive line is going to remain intact, and you still get some very talented transfer portal pieces coming in. Kiana DeCambra is going to be playing your right guard out of the transfer portal, and then Ty Buchanan here as well. DeCambra is over from Hawaii and was a really, really talented piece with the Rainbow Warriors. And then, of course, Buchanan, formerly of USC, transitions over from Texas Tech this upcoming season. So when I take a look at this offense, your run game is absolutely going to get better because I love Ismail Mahdi. I love everything he can do. Noah Fafita, I think, is going to learn from his mistakes last year, and he'll get better. And he's got a very, very talented wide receiver room, even without Tet McMillan. Same thing with the tight end room. I love how they impact this team. And then the offensive line, look, that can overall see a step in the right direction this year as well. They allowed 28 sacks this year. I got a pretty sneaky feeling that that's going to get better. Your offense, I love it. I love everything with this Arizona offense. When you swipe on over to the defensive side of things and your defensive coordinator and Danny Gonzalez, your defensive front, overall, maybe not necessarily was a for certain liability last year, but it did have a lot of moments where it struggled, and it overall needs a lot of work. The secondary last year overall was pretty solid, but it can also see a ton of improvement this upcoming season. This is a defensive front, however, only 21 sacks. That can get better. And the front does see many good pieces leave. But your sack leader and just overall vocal point of this defense in Trey Smith is going to be coming back. Was your fourth leading tackler with 56 tackles. And again, as it says right over, sorry, pointing the wrong way, right over here, your sack leader last year with 4.5 sacks. Lots of transfers are going to be coming into this defensive line room as well, most notably to play in the interior. And again, a lot of talented pieces do enter through that. I will butcher this name. I know I will, so don't even come at me. But I'm actually gonna look this one up. Okay, I gave myself some moments, sounded out. Tiaoli Savea. Tiaoli Savea. There you go. If I butchered it, I am so sorry. That's the pronunciation I found. He is going to be transferring into the defensive interior, I believe, over from Texas. Yes, that's correct. Very talented piece there. And then Deshaun McKnight, another one of those interior defensive line transfers. When you look at the linebacking room, you are going to lose a couple of really solid pieces. Jacob Manu and Sterling Lane both have good production for you last year, but your leader in Taye or Tay, however you pronounce the first name, Brown, he's coming back. 68 tackles, 2.5 sacks, which was tied for second on the team with a couple passes defended last season as well. So you're going to get him back. Really, really big get back for this linebacking unit. And then a lot of transfers are coming in, probably most notably to add some depth. You're probably going to see Chase Kennedy play a much bigger role for this defense this year, but Riley Wilson, Max Harris, and Blake Gotcher are all redshirt senior transfers that will probably end up getting some pretty solid playing time. At the very least, will be very good depth pieces for this linebacking room. Secondary returns many key pieces from last year. It really doesn't lose a whole lot. Genesis Smith, Dalton Johnson, Jack Luttrell, among other names that you could throw out there, and that's Luttrell with two T's. Again, among other names, are all pieces coming back, as well as some transfers that come in. Javion Cole was formerly of San Jose State and then transferred over to Texas. Did not get much playing time last year, but had 38 tackles with a sack, 3 interceptions, and 10 passes defended with the San Jose State Spartans in 2023. That was under Brent Brennan as head coach. So he's going to see a really big piece to this defense in the cornerback realm. Tell you what some of these defensive back players did. Dalton Johnson, leading tackler, 94 tackles. Genesis Smith, tied for the team lead with 3 interceptions. He was tied with Jack Luttrell. So again, a lot of great experience pieces in this defensive backfield. As far as special teams goes, you are going to have a new kicker to replace Tyler Loop, but your primary punter from last year in Jordan Forbes is going to be coming back. And notable social media star Cash Peterman, I believe, has transferred out of the program. So, bam, you take a look at this team overall. Again, I told you already, I absolutely love what this offense is built upon, especially if Noah Fafita can combine the passing yardage in 2024 with the overall efficiency and production levels in terms of touchdowns and fewer interceptions that he had in 2023. Run game's going to get better, and even without Ted McMillan, I love this wide receiver tight end room. I like the offensive line and all their pieces. And defensively, I think the defensive front is going to get better. Having viable pieces transferring in on the interior will open up these edge rushers. You should see more sack production this year. Taye Brown in the linebacker room, I think it's going to be a massive piece. And this secondary, I think, is going to give a lot of passing offenses fit this year. You have a ton of talented pieces, especially with Javion Cole transferring in. I like him a lot. Surprised he didn't play more at Texas. But again, that is an absolutely loaded room. Arizona is a team that I think everybody is sleeping on, especially recency bias after what happened last season. There's really, again, not a lot of hope. And I've even looked at some Wildcat fan bases and Wildcat fans that don't think they're going to be any good themselves. I know that may not be you out there. I'm here to tell all of you, especially the Wildcat fans, I think you're going to be a pretty darn solid team this year. But when I take a look at this schedule over here, I do see a pretty difficult road. I think there are a lot of really good, talented teams on this schedule. But again, Arizona is going to be much better than people think this year. So before we take a look at diving into this, you look down below me at some odds courtesy of FanDuel. They are conference odds, odds to win the national championship, and an overall win-loss total that are current as of recording this video, and just provide some good context to show all of you uh, again, how good the odds makers perceive Arizona to be this year. Not me telling you to go spend your money. You do what you want with it. You did earn it after all. Arizona has the second longest odds to win the Big 12 conference, or second or third. They have the second or third longest odds to win the Big 12 conference, which again, you could say doesn't mean anything because of how chaotic the Big 12 usually is. What's more, they have the highest odds to go win the national championship that you can get on FanDuel. Now, when you take a look at Arizona's odds to get into the college football playoff, which I do not have listed here, but I have right in front of me, it's at plus 3,000, which are some pretty long odds. But this is an Arizona team that I think if everything goes right and everything goes swimmingly, probably not going to get there, but they are very least going to surprise a fair bit of people. They are going to win their first two games of the season. Again, they did lose some, or Hawaii did lose some talent to this Wildcat team, and I don't think Hawaii is talented enough to keep up with what Arizona has got, especially offensively. And then Weber State going to be an easy win for Arizona in that category. You do have your third straight home game, and this is not a conference game. Again, Arizona and Kansas State had agreed to this home and away before Arizona had officially joined the Big 12. So it is not a conference game, and Arizona does get Kansas State this season at home. Got them on the road last year, and I do believe they came up short. However, this is a Kansas State team that I think is also going to, or I should say, is going to get that sweep against Arizona. Kansas State, to me, has a couple things I'm watching out for. What sort of jump is Avery Johnson going to take this season? And what does that secondary look like? Because Avery Johnson, while pretty solid last year, was not as good as what people imagined him to be. I expect him to take a step up this year, and that secondary was a massive liability. And it can be here, especially if Noah Fafita is better and this wide receiver room is as good as I and a lot of other people think it is going to be. I think the defense is going to be able to hold Ismail Mahdi and this Arizona run game pretty well. And I think its secondary will do enough against this passing game to be able to pull out the win. I also think Avery Johnson will take advantage of some of the holes that are going to be prevalent in the Wildcat defense this season. But overall, hard-fought game. I do think Kansas State walks away with that win. Get your first bye week after that game, and your prize, you get to go on the road and play what's going to end up being a pretty good Iowa State team that has a lot of returning pieces from a team that made the Big 12 title game last year. Now, you do not have Higgins or Noel at the wide receiver position. Those are some big losses. You did transfer in Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend, and what overall is going to seem like a deeper wide receiver room this year because you don't have just two guys that returning quarterback Rocco Becht is going to throw to all the time. What's more, returning offensively, Carson Hansen, Abu Sama, some really good running back pieces. Defensively, you return a ton of good production on that side of the football as well. And I do like Iowa State's odds to try to get back in to the Big 12 Conference Championship. I think they're going to be one of the most talented teams in the conference this year. And to me, that's a win for the Arizona State, or no, sorry, that's a win for the Iowa State. I'm mixing up all sorts of words right now. That's a win at home for the Iowa State Cyclones. Arizona, I do think, is going to be able to bounce back nicely and be able to beat the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, there's no way Oklahoma State has as disappointing of a season as they did last year. Ollie Gordon just did not run as well as we were used to seeing out of him. The quarterback situation with Alan Bowman was not necessarily what everyone hoped it would be. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great by any stretch of a mile. And Oklahoma State is losing a lot of wide receiver pieces, losing some really good defensive players. Overall, again, I do think Oklahoma State is going to see some improvement. They didn't win a conference game last year. That is surely to change this upcoming season. And there was a lot that went wrong last year. However, how good they are going to be or how much they're going to improve, I still have a lot of questions of such. Zane Flores is going to be that starting quarterback for you this year. And I do have a lot of questions on how good he is going to be and how much he does improve, or not necessarily improve, but how much he does show in his first full year as a starting quarterback. To me, a lot to look out for with Oklahoma State, but overall, a lot of questions. I do think Arizona will get this one done at home. At home against BYU. I know of the whole Jake Retzlaff situation has thrown a wrench into the plans here with BYU. I do not think it's going to matter too much. I like Kalani Sitake as a head coach, and BYU, even without Jake Retzlaff, as long as Kalani Sitake is there, has a ton of staying power towards the top half or in the top half, towards the top echelon of the Big 12 Conference. even without Jake Retzlaff, I think BYU has got a ton of pieces to be very competitive this season. Running back, wide receiver, tight end pieces that I really, really like, defensive pieces that I really, really like. And I think you're going to see moments this season where some of the bad performances that Noah Fafita and some of the defensive pieces have had is going to rear its ugly head. This might be one of them against a BYU team that's going to play hard. They're going to play well. They're very well coached. I just see Arizona falling short in this game against BYU. On the road against Houston is another very interesting one because Houston is a team that's got a lot of change this season. There is a lot that is changing from last year. However, there should still be that improvement this upcoming season. 3-6 in conference play last year. Hey, you can absolutely build off of that. Willie Fritz, I think, needs a little bit more time. You do have Connor Wigman coming in there to play the quarterback position. Again, this is going to be a tricky game as Houston does possess a lot of problems for this Arizona team. But I do think Arizona is going to be able to pull this one out. I like Arizona just a little bit more. I like them actually quite a lot more than the way I perceive this Houston team, even though I think Houston takes a step in the right direction. Arizona in this offense, I think that's going to see some solid numbers this year. Overall, I think a little bit too much for a Houston defense that could be liable in some aspects. On the road against Colorado, after a bye week, you have an extra week to prepare, and I think this is the game a lot of Arizona fans are going to look and say, hey, we absolutely should win this one, or we absolutely can win this one. There's no reason for us not to. And look, there's no Travis Hunter, there's no Shadur Sanders, there's no Shiloh Sanders, there's no other great offensive or defensive weapons. But it's still Dion, and it's still Coach Prime. You have Caden Salter and Julian Lewis at the quarterback position. Salter probably going to end up start there, and if he can get back to what he was doing in 2023, oh man, that Colorado offense is still going to be scary. Defensively, I do think they see some improvement this year. Now, the question becomes, can Arizona's defensive front overpower the Colorado offensive line enough? Because that is the main problem area with Colorado. I think Caden Salter is going to be a little bit too dynamic for this Arizona defense to handle as a whole, which means I do think you'll lose this one on the road against Colorado. These two games coming up here, Kansas and Cincinnati. I think you win both of them. Now, Kansas is a team that has really struggled defensively and especially has struggled defending outside the numbers when teams like to spread you out. Arizona can do that. Arizona is going to do that. Then you throw in a run game that I think is going to be much better this year, and opponents are going to have to respect a lot more than what we saw last year. Noah Fafita throwing the thing deep, even without Tet McMillan. I ran through the list. They got some good wide receiver pieces. There still are health concerns with Jalen Daniels. Can he stay healthy? And even if he does stay healthy, how much does he actually improve this season? What does his production actually look like? This is the Kansas defense with some good pieces coming in, but overall, offensively, defensively, some of the great stars that we have seen are not necessarily there, especially on the defensive side. You'll lose a lot of talent. I think Arizona gets that one done at home, and then I think they go on the road and beat Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati is a team that a lot of people are expecting to take a step in the right direction. And believe me, I would not be surprised if that happens. In fact, that's probably more likely than not. But there's going to be one team, two teams, maybe even three that are disappointing because of the chaos and things surrounding the Big 12 Conference. And I think Cincinnati is one of them. Plus, I like this matchup here with Arizona. I like the way they match up. And I like the way Arizona plays Cincinnati. And they get that one done on the road. So look at that. After a over-under win total at 5.5, you can have a chance to improve on that. You can have a chance to, look, you're already at 6 to me. You're going to have a chance to really surprise in the Big 12 Conference this year. And with 3 conference losses already, probably don't know that you're in that Big 12 championship game picture, but it is the Big 12. Who knows? Everyone in this conference could go 500, and it really wouldn't surprise me. At home against Baylor, I do think is a loss. Everything that Arizona has offensively, or what I think Arizona's going to have offensively this year, pretty solid run game. A quarterback, wide receiver, a quarterback throwing to a wide receiver and tight end room that are going to cause problems for opposing secondary. I think Baylor's got it just a little bit better. Sawyer Robertson is there. He's got a really good group of wide receivers, even without Ashton Hawkins. 2 potential 1,000-yard rushers back in that room, one of which has already achieved the mark. In fact, both of them might have already achieved the mark. Defense, I like a little bit more than Arizona. Baylor's a team to watch out for in the Big 12 this year, and on the road against Arizona State, I just don't see it. A team that made a college football playoff last year after winning the Big 12, gave Texas a fit, and they return everybody from last season. I don't think Arizona's going to get past their rivals in Tempe, but still a successful season nonetheless, and a season that I think is going to defy a lot of people's expectations. I like Noah Fafita. I like the wide receiver room. I like Ismail Mahdi. I think the defense can see some improvement this season in areas as well. Don't sleep on this Arizona team. I got them getting to the postseason and making a bowl game this year. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.